And the last thing I want to talk about is kind of going into the Metroid stuff is that I was turned on to this channel by a NeoGaf post that said Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, the game that should have been Metroid. And I'm like, So I click it and I'm like, oh, is this a thing where it's someone complaining about Tropical Freeze again? It's actually the inverse. It's a channel on YouTube called The Geek Critique. Not the greatest name. It sounds like one of those.
I saw you
early...
sub to that.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are these?
So it's just a guy that makes like critiques on various games and did the entire Metroid series. Like, this is why this Metroid is good. This is why it has some flaws, in my opinion, and does a very, very good, like, research and presents a lot of theories that I'm like, that totally makes sense to me. It's like
sort of like King K or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And like, did like a bunch of the Sonic games, a bunch of the Metroid games, and all the Donkey Kong Country games. So it's definitely in my wheelhouse of like, yes, I have these opinions too. And I'll just talk a little bit about the Tropical Freeze thing because it was very, very interesting. It was like, Tropical Freeze is one of the best platformers like of the last 10 years, but it was definitely not regarded as so. And these are the reasons why. It was on the Wii U. There was already like, it was a dismal failure compared to the Wii, but Donkey Kong Country Returns sold like 10 million copies or something insane on the Wii. So it already like has less people going for it. And like, this was at a time where like people are so starved for Metroid that just because this wasn't Metroid, like there was this online backlash. And because there's this perception of failure to give us a new Metroid, we will be angry at this really good Donkey Kong game. And he also made the really good point that Donkey Kong has brand recognition, but no identity. For the last 10 or 15 years since Rare made a Donkey Kong game, most people might think that Donkey Kong is just a Mario universe character. Because for the longest time, he was just in Mario parties and kart games, right?
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. It's like, what? Like, there would be a whole generation of people that might be like, this weird Mario character gets 2 games? Like, being kind of ignorant of, like, the history of the character, but I don't begrudge anyone that if they weren't born yet or, like, playing video games. And I'm like, these are perfect reasons why, like, that game kind of failed to, like, reach the sales that it did or the recognition. And the only positive takeaway is that he said, look, nowadays you'll see some posts, you'll see some people saying, actually, when I actually like step aside, and it's been a couple of years since that game came out, it's a really, really good platformer. It like improves on every single thing that the first Donkey Kong Returns did, and it was just a really good video. And I started diving into his Metroid stuff, and this was a guy that had played no classic Metroids, did not play Metroid Prime 1, did not play Metroid Prime 2, but wanted a Wii really bad, and then he got hyped on Metroid Prime 3, and that's where he started. And he's like, this is probably one of the most unique places to start the Metroid series, because what's the first thing that happens? You have tons of voice acting, a story that takes a long time to like let you start playing, and a lot of tutorials and motion controls. And he's like, I hated Metroid for a while. I'm like, this is it? This is the game that people are blah, 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 blah. And then it's only when he got the Metroid Prime trilogy or the download of it. I didn't go too far in to see the explanations, but he's like, now I'm a Metroid fan because I've played them all now and beaten them all now. And like, now I think Prime 3 it does some really cool things. It's a little misguided in that it was trying to be Halo with a little bit of the story and some of the things it was doing.
What's the name of this guy?
The name of the guy I kind of don't remember because the YouTube channel is called The Geek Critique.
Oh, okay.
That's the name of the channel.
I was about to say, because this does sound a lot like the stuff that King K makes, since he's a big Metroid guy. Yeah, and he has a similar kind of history. There's
a lot of Metroid fans that like making these types of videos too. So I was just really he's got a lot of there's a decent amount of videos. So I was blasting through them over the weekend, and it's really good stuff. So I recommend it.
Cool. I'm gonna tag onto that because I saw a really good video this weekend as well that deserves a shout out. The Gaming Brit Show channel made a video called Challenges the Core of Video Games.
Yeah.
And it's fucking excellent. It's basically in the light of a lot of the Cuphead difficulty controversy that's being discussed these days. This is basically a video that, describes that describes a lot of the reasons that video games should be hard. And basically the core thesis comes down to the difficulty of the struggle adds to your feeling of accomplishment when you get further into the game. And when certain scenes play out and like make you feel when you feel a sense of like, fuck, I really battled my ass off to get here. I struggled through everything to get to the final plateau. And the opening example he uses is you're standing across from Virgil at the waterfall.
He loves Devil May Cry, Gaming Brit.
And you're like, this is the culmination of everything you've done and bled for up to this point. And you now have to earn it in this extremely challenging fight. It just feels incredible, right? And it gives you a feeling that you can't get if you just watched on your way there. It gives you a feeling you can't get if you just browsed or skipped or didn't actually struggle through.
You have to play.
You have to play it.
Put in the work.
You have to feel the challenge. And that's something that only video games can do that no other medium can't. So trying to make it become like other mediums is something that kind of spits in the face of what a game that's trying to challenge you is also trying to deliver with its like narrative or message or story or whatever, if they tie those things together. Not every game does tie them together, but when they do, it's a really unique thing that we should probably embrace and explore more instead of try to shy away from in order to make it more like movies or more like other mediums. We should embrace what video games do uniquely that other mediums can't do.
I mean, I'd lobby to say that, the Souls games did like put a peg up there.
They did. They did.
Yeah, like before Souls games came out, I mean, there were hard games before, but like before Souls games came out, it was like we were in the dregs of point A to point B.
Everything
Call
needs
of
to be
Duty.
accessible.
Everything has to be accessible, exactly, Plague.
But it's so interesting that this whole thing is...
The Cuphead's doing it again.
It is.
Yeah.
But the most interesting thing about Souls games and like Cuphead and all these discussions every time they happen is that they're just doing what video games used to do.
All the time. Yeah.
We started there, and then as things got bigger, they changed. But then, like, to some degree... And here's the thing is, back in the day, there were some arcade games that are poor shit. Because they meant to be quarter munchers, right?
Big profits.
But again, when we go back to console games, where it's like, no, the difficulty meant the challenge lasted longer and whatnot. It's like, yeah, we started in this place and we moved away from it because more people got involved.
Yeah, and
that's fine.
Plus, it wasn't particularly fun sometimes.
Understandably, it's not for everybody. And like we talked about, tourism versus challenge.
This is the kind of the problem I've had with this debate recently too, is that because it's the internet, it's become extremely binary.
Yep.
This idea that video games need to be difficult because of what you just said. But for some people, they don't get that feeling. Like me, I don't get that feeling. Like the other night, I was streaming, and I did this on stream. I was doing some challenge where you had to kill a certain number of orcs before some drakes did. And there's an optional challenge where you had to kill 10 of them, I think, with explosive barrels or something. So it became this game of just restarting the mission over and over and over again for like 30 or 40 minutes in a row, because there was apparently some extremely specific sequence of events you had to do to ensure 100% that you would get those 10 in addition to actually beating the challenge.
Right. And
by the time I actually did complete it, I just collapsed in my chair and I didn't feel any joy whatsoever. I just thought, fuck that.
Of course.
Fuck this. And that is awful.
And the whole time my girlfriend was watching me play Cuphead, she'd be like, I don't understand how you're having fun with that.
To a lot of people,
that just looks incredibly annoying to me. And like, I don't know. She's like, are you...
You're like, I don't know either.
And, and she'd be like, are you enjoying this? And I'm like, yeah, no, I am. And she'd be like, I don't get it. So it's a personality thing. For sure.
Well, this is the binary problem, is people have turned it into a black and white thing of, well, you don't like difficulty, therefore you are a casual player, or you can handle it, baby, or something like that. Or on the other hand, people
say that to me all the time.
Get good, and so on.
Yes, I said it to you before we started.
Yeah, you can't handle it, baby.
But the flip side also is like people that enjoy that think it's the point of view gun thing again. It's people that think, well, I enjoy games as they are. They don't need to be incredibly challenging, be just enough. And they'll look at other people and say, well, you need to have nails hammered through your balls for you to get any experience whatsoever out of this.
Like everything else in life, the answer is on neither extreme.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, of course it's not.
That's what Dark Souls was. Like the original Dark Souls, and it kind of got away from this. Like 2 and 3 especially got to where it's like difficulty, and 2 fetishized it, but it wasn't that hard. But 1 was not a very difficult game. I mean, you've played it. Like, it's not incredibly difficult.
I was shocked how well Wooly did on 1, because I always heard it was the hardest one of all.
It's not that big a deal. It's not that it was a hard game. It was just a game that respected the time that you're putting into it. It was just an ordinary game in an era in which there were no ordinary games.
Certainly, but there also was something. There's a moment that happened at the beginning of me and Matt and I both playing DS2 the first time in those videos, where if you don't know that you can't just run up to an enemy and wail on it, then the last 10 years have been training you wrong. Yeah. You will have a hard time adjusting until you figure that part out. Right? The idea of swinging at something and backing off is not natural to every other video game you just played, including the fucking super hard ones. Like, even Ninja Gaiden, when you start playing Ninja Gaiden, you know what I mean? It's super hard, but you're wailing on shit, and then, like, the next thing that comes is the problem. The idea that you'd have to swing at something and then back off and then go back in is something you have to figure out before you can get any further into the Souls.
It's a puzzle. It's just a puzzle. It reminds me of, Mario Maker.
Yeah, sure.
Have you ever seen one of those, this is the hardest Mario Maker level ever made? It's one of those things where Mario has to do something like grab a turtle shell in midair on
kick
this
it in
frame.
Midair. Yeah.
Kick it, land back onto it, jump back off of it, and do
yes.
it is an extremely frame specific thing that you have to do. Yeah. And that the whole level is like it's like 2 minutes long, but you have to do everything frame perfect.
Yeah,
there are no other solutions.
Yeah, Kaiser shit. Yeah.
And then you have like ordinary Mario levels. Like, one is fun, the other one can be fun, but for a very specific group of players. And I enjoy looking at the videos of like some Japanese guy completing this level and just like freaking out and losing his mind. Like, I can see the value in it.
Now,
but I would never play that.
and that's it. Like, but like, you know, like you tend to fall one way or the other. But I think both extremes are bad, and both extremes are poisonous to the medium.
Yeah. That's what the Cuphead thing of, I can't get over the thing because the guy was an idiot. That thing.
Sure.
Like, he can't complete the tutorial.
Yeah.
Like, people were using that as a crutch to try to avoid the discussion in the first place. Some modern video games do fetishize difficulty. They do.
That's true. That's true. And here's the thing is that as somebody who, the best feelings I've gotten from video games as a whole have been the moments where you beat Virgil, where you beat Armstrong, where you beat Jean, where you beat the character that is a fucking wall, and that you slammed your head against until you finally figured it out. Have been the best feelings.
And that's your personality. You value things like you're not on the binary spectrum. Like, you're not over there to the point of being insane. But it's comparable to the challenge of beating someone who's really good at a fighting game. You know, except that now there's like story, significance, plot, whatever else going with it, where you're like, fuck yeah, you're in the moment, you're feeling really good. Like, nothing that happens in a game that's more and more so about the tourism has ever felt as good to me. So that's why I tend to fall on the side that has no problem when a game is like definitely challenging or requires tons of restarts until you figure out the solution. The trial and error. If I'm playing something like that, I find no value in it whatsoever, because I get to this point where, like, well, I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, just trying to time the frames just so that baby can have his fucking challenge complete. And I finally get to that point, and I'm like, finally, thank God I'm done. There's no value to it for me.
Yeah.
Because to me, my golden rule is, it's fine for me to lose. Like, I'm not the tourism guy. Like, I'm not just there just to see things and put the controller down. Oh, that's nice. One of those people. To me, the golden rule is you should repeat that sequence for as long as there's valuable content to be learned from it.
Well, that's puzzle solving, which you enjoy puzzle solving. I enjoy pattern recognition. And that's the thing, is pattern recognition versus puzzle solving are what the two core breakdowns are. Because
this is really a gradient. Like, there's no clean yes or no with this.
Yeah. But the point is that Cuphead, does something interesting where it's like you can play every boss on simple. No one says you have to do this hard, right? That is there for you. When you do it on simple, you don't get the contract, but you can progress through the world. But when you get to the end, the devil's like, you don't have the contract, right? So you don't get your...
So you can still see all the bosses.
You can see everything up until the devil.
Yeah.
By playing through on simple. And once you have the contracts, then you talk to the devil, and that begins the final fight of the game. Or it doesn't, or whatever, right? So like you can do most, if not everything, without having to play on regular.
But that's not the most optimal way to play, because it's like you'd have to basically play the game twice.
The idea is that like playing on simple kind of like will like
because you don't see certain attacks and phases when you play in simple.
I haven't played a single stage on simple, so I don't even know what the differences are.
They're simple.
But is it less life or is
no they don't do
change.
Certain attacks.
Okay.
And they just don't have
phases are just gone.
I see. Okay.
It's a boss encounter that is missing content.
I see.
So I would say that that's not the right way to handle it.
And because
that sort of game, there's not really right.
It's actually better than a lot of games do handle it.
Well, I feel
that's true too.
At the very least, it will allow someone that wants to be a tourist to be a tourist to some degree, and like and the idea is perhaps that they would like. If you felt like, okay, that practice on simple allowed me to like step it up a little bit, and I know a bit more about how to beat this boss and how to move and stuff, then it wouldn't be such a hard time when you step up the difficulty. But if you do want to just move on and see the next cool boss, then you can do that.
I think the simple mode.
The problem with that is that if you're not seeing specific animations, then that defeats the whole point of appealing to a tourist, because they're not seeing.
But you're still seeing like a lot of fun stuff. It's not like
some of it.
Yeah, some of it. It's not like, the bosses just stand there and just shoot you once or twice or whatever. They do their elaborate shit. It's just they don't do all.
But it's up to each game to determine what the point of their game is, right? Yeah. And if Cuphead determines that like the challenge is the core of this game, then that means that they're like, we don't have much of a story for you here. We've got some cool animation that you want to see.
Yeah, and it's
dope. But I mean,
and it is plays to anyone that loves this aesthetic, because you're going to get it in spades. But
you know what I mean. But it's like that's kind of like it's up to each game to sort of determine that and play it out as they would. And I don't have a problem with Cuphead doing it the way it did.
That's the reason why I haven't bought it yet. Just it's not something that directly appeals to me. But eventually I might pick it up.
But all that to say, I want to shout out the Gaming Brit channel. And I kind of miss when Charlie Cade. Who put this video out recently, because it's a fantastic summary. I
kind of miss when he just remember events. He was starting to play just random things, and that's where we got turned on battle construction vehicles.
Right.
He was in the video, but now like all his videos are like pretty harsh but fair critiques, and I'm like, oh, I wanted you to play weird British games that I didn't know existed. I wish he'd kind of do those occasionally, but yeah, that's a good channel too.